Hello, it's Catherine here from Catherine Crochets, and in this tutorial today I'm going to show you how to join crochet hexagons like these with a solid crochet join. What I mean by solid is that the hexagons are joined stitch to stitch all the way solidly along all sides of the hexagon. It's a join as you go method, which simply means that you make the join whilst crocheting the final round of your hexagon. In the example that I'm showing you, this is my Superstars blanket, although the method would work with any crochet hexagons that you might want to join together in this way. If you're interested in making a Superstars blanket like this one, you can find the link to the pattern for the whole blanket in the description for this video below. There's also another tutorial available, which is for a quick hexagon join for joining hexagons, and that's slightly different to this one in that it's not joined solidly all along the side. It's a slightly quicker method because you just join at the corners and halfway along each side. So if you're interested in checking out that method as well, I'll pop a link to the video for that tutorial below as well, so you can have a look, compare them both and see which one is for you. So let's get started with the tutorial. Now, here's the hexagon that I'm going to be joining, and I'm going to be joining it to these three hexagons here in this position. As you can see, I've made the hexagon all the way up to the final round, but I haven't started crocheting the final round yet. For this particular pattern, the final round just requires a UK treble or a US double crochet into each of the trebles from the previous round, except the trebles at the point of each star. Instead of making a stitch into those, we just do a chain to make a chain space across there. And then in each of the corner spaces, I'm going to be working one UK treble or US double crochet, 2 chains, and then another treble crochet or US double crochet. Now, the way I like to join my hexagons, so I'm going to be joining 3 sides. I like to make those the last 3 sides of the hexagon that I crochet. So in this case, we're starting in the middle of a side, so I'd work along 1, 2, 3 sides, and then join the final 3 sides, 1, 2, 3, make those final 3 sides the sides that I join. If you prefer, you could crochet along the first bit of this partial side and then join the next 3 sides and then finish off the rest of your hexagon. It's totally up to you. So as I mentioned, we don't do any treble crochets into the points of the stars in this pattern, but that is where we finish the last round. So I'm going to start the round with a slip stitch into the next treble crochet or US double crochet, chain 3 to count as my first treble, and then I'm just going to work the stitch pattern around with treble crochets into the chain spaces to make the corners until I've got 3 sides left to join. So I'll do that now, and then meet you again when we're ready to join the hexagon. Now, I'm crocheting along, coming up to the end of the 3rd side. So I've got 3 full sides left to crochet. When I get to the corner chain space, I crochet a treble crochet or US double crochet as usual. Then normally we're making 2 chains to make the corner chain space, but I'm going to be joining this corner to this corner chain space here from this hexagon. So instead of making 2 chains, I make the first chain as usual, and then instead of the second chain, I'm going to make a slip stitch into this corner chain space. So I insert my hook up through that corner chain space, yarn over, and pull that yarn all the way through everything on my hook and pull it tight to secure it. Now we're going to join this edge of our hexagon, the hexagon that I've just made, onto this hexagon that was made previously. And the method for this is simply that before every treble that needs to be worked, or US double crochet that needs to be worked along this edge, we make a slip stitch into the corresponding stitch of this hexagon. So the next stitch that I would need to work would be a UK treble or US double crochet into this chain space. But before I make that, I do a slip stitch through the corresponding stitch. So this stitch here from this hexagon, which was made into that corner chain space. So I simply insert my hook from the back to the front, yarn over and pull it through everything to make a slip stitch. Then I make my UK treble US double crochet into this corner chain space. And then I just continue along the edge, working a slip stitch into the corresponding stitch from this hexagon before making the stitch into that one. So I'll make this was the first treble that I slip stitched into, so this is the next one. Then I'm going to make a slip stitch through there and then make a treble crochet or US double crochet into the next stitch and continue along, slip stitch into the stitch from the previous hexagon and make the treble crochet or US double crochet into my new hexagon. And we'll keep going along here, in the same way until we get to the point of the star, where, as I mentioned, in this pattern we won't be working any stitch into that point of the star. We won't be doing a treble crochet or US double crochet into that stitch. Now I've got an end, I haven't sewn in any ends yet, so this is just the end from, this was the first stitch of that round, so it was a chain 3 instead of a treble, but it works in just the same way. Insert your hook through the top of that chain and make a slip stitch into it, and then make your treble crochet or US double crochet into that corresponding stitch. Now here we're not making crocheting any stitch into the top of this star. If it were an edge that wasn't being joined, we'd just chain 1 and then continue making a treble crochet or US double crochet into the next stitch. But what we're going to do instead of that chain 1, we just make a slip stitch into the corresponding chain 1 space from the other hexagon. Then we need to make another slip stitch into the next stitch from that hexagon before continuing our way along to make a treble or US double into the next stitch. And then I'll just pull that through, that was the end peeking through there. And then we just keep going all the way along the edge, making a slip stitch and then a treble crochet and then another slip stitch, oops, and a treble crochet, and we keep going until we get to the corner. Slip stitch, treble crochet, slip stitch, treble crochet, slip stitch, treble crochet. Now that's the last treble crochet from the previous round, but remember we still need to make a treble crochet into this corner chain space. So there's one treble crochet left here on, so it's this one here from the adjacent hexagon. So I've joined into the top of that one. I've got this one left here. So we make a slip stitch into the top of that treble crochet and then make our treble crochet or US double crochet into the chain space. Now, instead of making 2 chains now to make the corner, we're going to replace each of those chains with a slip stitch. And the first goes into the corner chain space from this hexagon. So we insert our hook from back to front and make a slip stitch, and then the second slip stitch goes into the corner chain space from the next hexagon round. So we join to the corner of that hexagon. Then we'd be ready to make another treble crochet, but before we do that, we make a slip stitch into the top of the treble crochet from the corner space of the next hexagon. And then, just losing my blanket a bit, pull it up. It's better. Disappearing off the edge of the table there. So we made our slip stitch into that treble crochet from along this side of this hexagon, and then we can make our treble crochet into the corner chain space of our new hexagon. And then we continue along this edge, joining this edge in the same way. So we slip stitch into the next treble from the brown hexagon, the hexagon with the brown star, and then make a treble crochet or US double crochet into the next stitch from our new hexagon that we're joining. We keep working all the way along this side until we get to the next corner space. So remember though that when you get to the point of the star for this pattern, it might be if you've got a different hexagon that you're joining and you haven't got a chain space halfway along the side, if it's all stitches, then you can just keep doing slip stitches through the corresponding stitch before making your stitch on the hexagon that you're joining. But with this pattern, remember we've got a chain space halfway along the side, so instead of making a chain, we just do a slip stitch into that chain space and then continue with a slip stitch into the next stitch before making our new treble or US double crochet. And then keep going all the way along to the corner space, and then we do the same thing as we did at the last corner. We replace the 2 corner chains with a slip stitch into each of the corresponding corner spaces from the 2 hexagons at that corner, which I will show you again shortly because we're nearly there now. What I love about this method, because it's join as you go, you've got a nice small hexagon motif to make, but then you see your blanket growing as you make all the motifs. So I've just made my treble crochet, US double crochet, first one into this corner chain space, and then instead of 2 chains, I'm just going to make a slip stitch into each of these 2 chain spaces here. So I go from the back to the front, slip stitch, and then always remember you then need to make another slip stitch into the first stitch along that side before making your treble crochet into the corner chain space. I'll shift things around a little bit, and then we'll continue with, this is our 3rd and final edge that we'll be joining. So we make a slip stitch into the next stitch along that edge, slip stitch into the corresponding treble, sorry, not a slip stitch, make a treble or a US double into the corresponding stitch from the hexagon that we're joining. It's quite a quick method once you get into the hang of it. Key is to make sure you don't crochet too many edges before starting to join them, otherwise you won't have enough edges left to join. So we're halfway along this edge already now, and we make a slip stitch into the chain space, slip stitch into the next stitch, and treble or US double into there. Keep going along to the final corner to be joined, and I'll show you what we do there in a moment when we get there. Here we go, so we've got to the corner space, so we do a slip stitch into the treble that was in that corner chain space, and then make our treble into our new corner chain space. Then we're gonna, instead of making 2 chains to make this corner, we make 1 slip stitch into that corner chain space from this hexagon, and then there's no other hexagon here yet, so we make 1 chain to create a corner chain space. I'll just turn my blanket around a bit. Then there's no joining along here, so I just complete this, the rest of this side of the hexagon as normal. So I just work a treble crochet into the corner chain space and then treble along to complete the round, or US double crochet. The pattern, if you do decide to get the pattern for this blanket, there's two versions available, one in UK crochet terms and one in US crochet terms, so you can use whichever version you're more comfortable with. And then to complete the round, I just make a chain. Then to complete the round, we just slip stitch into the top of the chain there, yarn over and pull through the top and pull that nice and tight, and then snip off the end and fasten off. And then I'll show you how it looks all finished. So we started here, we crocheted half the side, 2 full size, and then joined along these 3 edges. So that every stitch, I call it a solid join because it's joined all the way along, stitch to stitch, and we've joined our hexagon onto the rest of the hexagons in this blanket. And this method of doing the slip stitches, it gives you a bit of a raised sort of honeycomb effect, a raised join along here, which I find quite attractive. So I hope you found that helpful. As I mentioned, I've got another tutorial which shows you a slightly different method for joining hexagons to each other, a slightly quicker method, and I'll pop a link to that tutorial below. If you'd like the pattern, there's a link to the pattern below as well. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to receive notifications of new tutorials. I also film podcasts from time to time, and there's links to all my patterns and my email list, which I'd love it if you'd like to subscribe to, in the description below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.